Hey, thanks for joining me for a summary of Sunday's message, Cowards and Heroes. There was an op-ed written in the Center Square, and the title said this: "Are we a society of cowards or heroes?" And William Hopp III answers that question this way. He says, "Why are there more cowards today than heroes? Because it's easier to take the coward's way out. Heroes courageously seek out the truth. Those who bow to group appeal at the expense of principles are cowards. Cowards do only what is safest for them." Did you get that? Cowards do only what is safest for them. Well, answering this question is really important, particularly for us as Christians, because as we move closer and closer to Christ's return, the pressure to compromise right and wrong is only going to grow, culminating in pressure to compromise our very faith and deny Jesus as Lord. Heroes are going to persevere, though, but cowards are going to eventually give in. So the big question for us to answer today is, how can we be a hero of the faith and not a coward? Well, number one is this: remember, you have better possessions awaiting you than this life has to offer. I want to read to you Hebrews chapter 10, verses 32 to 36, and I hope you'll hang with me for maybe a few extra minutes today, because this is a very important topic for us as believers as well as the world. And listen to what the writer of Hebrews said in chapter 10, beginning with verse 32, and we'll go through 36. He says, "Remember those earlier days after you had received the light," meaning after they had become Christians, "when you stood your ground in a great contest in the face of suffering. Sometimes you were publicly exposed to insult and persecution. At other times you stood side by side with those who were so treated. You sympathized with those in prison and joyfully accepted the confiscation of your property because you knew that you yourselves had better and lasting possessions. So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised." So you see, when you're tested, what you need to do is remember that that if you persevere, you'll be richly blessed in heaven with better and lasting possessions, as the writer of Hebrews says, with things that will last forever as compared with the very temporary things of this life. So, I mean, if you lose something in this life because you take a stand for what's right and you take a stand for Christ, so be it. It's nothing compared to the treasures that you're laying up in heaven. The second way to be a hero of the faith is to consider the consequences of shrinking back. You've got to consider the consequences. Look at what the writer continues to say, beginning with verse 37. He says, "For in just a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. But my righteous one," meaning those who live righteously, "but my righteous one will live by faith. And if he shrinks back, I will not be pleased with him." Now, this is the Lord speaking. Then the writer goes on and says, "But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who believe and are saved." If you shrink back, where's the world going to hear the truth? I mean, the only people that have the truth is Christians, and if we're not out there taking a stand for what is right, if we're not out there sharing Christ with people, where are they going to hear it? They're not going to hear it anywhere, so we cannot compromise the truth. They need to hear it from us, the heroes of the faith. And here's a startling reality, but if you shrink back in the smaller matters of right and wrong, eventually you're going to shrink back in confessing Jesus as Lord. Things are only going to get worse. The testing and the temptation to compromise are only going to get worse. And if you can't take a stand now as things are, and we know they're getting worse, what's going to happen when it comes to possibly your life? And someone saying, look, you either deny Jesus or you die. What are you going to do? I mean, if you can't stand now, how are you going to be able to stand then? And here's what John says about those who will shrink back and deny Jesus as Lord. Listen to what John says in Revelation 21:8. He says, but the cowardly, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about heroes. We're talking about cowards. He says, but the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. And thirdly, the way you can be a hero of the faith is to just trust God with your life. I mean, you just have to trust God with all that you are. And you can do that. Listen to what David said when his life was being threatened by the Philistines when he was in captivity. He came to this conclusion. He said, look, when I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God I trust. Not in himself, not in the world, not in society, but in God I trust. I will not be afraid. And here's why he knew he didn't have to be afraid. What can mortal man do to me? What can mortal man do to you? I mean, at the very worst, man can take your life. And if you lose your life for Christ, then what? You go to be with him. So you can't lose. So why wouldn't we be heroes of the faith? Listen to what Jack Cottrell said about John's word in Revelation 21:8 that I just read to you. He said, even today in some anti-biblical cultures such as communism and Islam, Christians sometimes have to choose between cowardice and courage at the risk of their very lives. As of now, in the American culture, we have not yet come to this. But trust me, ladies and gentlemen, it is coming. He says, but as of now, in the American culture, we have not yet come to this. But Christians are often called upon to take more subtle risks for Christ's sake. Sometimes we must choose between faithfulness on the one hand and such things as social popularity and acceptance, the respect of the intelligentsia, good grades in a college science course, or even our job. May we be faithful in these relatively small things now so that we may be prepared to confess Jesus as Lord even in the worst circumstances. Be a hero. Be a hero. It's the only way to live. And we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but we are of those who believe and are saved. Hey, thanks for joining me for another summary of this past Sunday's message. If you want more details on great discussions like this, join us at New Day Fellowship every Sunday morning at 10:30 at 115 North Fayette Street in Shippensburg at Branch Creek Place. Some people know it as the Senior Center. And come and have a free breakfast with us, an incredible worship time, and great in-depth Bible discussions that encourage all those that attend. So I hope I'll see you here again this coming Sunday. And this week we're going to be talking about how to defeat the giants in our lives. All right, I'll see you this Sunday.